Afternoon, Mr. Ward.
Hey, what's up?
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm, living my best life over here.
Living our best lives. We're back in the final ep of our buyer mini series. We cut it to 3 instead of 4, which was nice.
Yeah.
And geez, if you're paying attention to Spotify, we are dropping the ball with a sabbatical through the end of June and the 4th of July. Took some vacation time. I know you did as well. And we are back ready to rip here on the Word podcast. We got a Market
Yeah, I
Minute
think like
recorded
everything
recently.
good.
What's that?
I said like everything
You need a
that's
break?
good, like every now and then you need a break to
It's
recharge, get
with
better at it.
in
I think that's
absence,
where
the
we
heart
were.
grows fonder,
Yeah.
they say, right?
Yeah.
So listen, if you recall in our last mini series, I get some notes here. I just wanted to rip off. We covered a ton. We were closing it out with, we started with getting your offer accepted and the closing process and what the closing team and the attorney and the purchase and sales does. We went through about different types of contingencies and all of the different types of earnest money deposits that we typically had to place and where that goes, um, which is called escrow, not to be confused with the escrow for your mortgage payments and your prepaid closing costs, which we spend a ton of time on. And again, obviously a great time to get your local lender involved and get some estimates on all of those. But in summary, those closing costs are always your prepaids, your prepaid insurance, your prepaid interest, the registry. As you said, everybody gets paid, right? The
Everybody
registry gets paid. None of us are doing this for free, unfortunately.
yeah.
And so everyone is a part of that closing cost. Pocketbook, and then really
Yeah.
we snugged
An
all the way
initial
up.
funding. Sorry.
Yes, initial funding. We snugged all the way up to closing day, and we didn't touch it. And today we're
Yeah.
gonna go on. We're really close to closing. We're gonna execute a little intel about what's called the final walkthrough today, and geez, what's closing day look like? And really, I think what would be important to kind of kick us off with, if we could, is it would be cool for you as the dude at the end of the deal who signs it,
Yeah.
gets this done for the buyers and for the sellers, to talk a little bit about what I tell clients about is like kind of this 72 to 96 hour blackout period where like, guys like you and I who have been steering this ship for the better part of 60 days get in the dark a little bit where we're waiting for, as you would call it, the troll somewhere in Madison, Wisconsin to push us what's called the closing package, right? So
The package.
um,
Or otherwise just the package.
the package, right? So,
Yeah.
this is the cool thing when you work with a team of trusted professionals, we have all these good people like Brendan, myself, our local lenders, and we've all been rowing in the same direction, like we also talked about last time about getting to the closing table. But eventually, unfortunately, Brendan and I personally are not the ones cutting the check for you to buy this house. It's the bank, and it's not even the loan officer who really has complete control about that. They have to get it to the elusive and hidden quote unquote closing department.
Yeah.
And so the consumer experience I found is always a little strange in that final week where
A
we're
hundred
waiting.
percent.
They're always pinging
I
us like, when's
yeah.
closing, right? Hey, can we do it at X time? And we're like, we don't know. So you've
Right.
been relying on us for the better part of 70 days or whatever for your deal. And now we're kind of left answerless. And so just talk about that a little bit, because I think, this is probably a good segment to push to a lot of new clients as they really don't know what to expect in that final week of closing.
Yeah, and this is a topic of much debate, I think, at least we have internally, is that, we feel like we are really good
Yeah.
at all facets of the transaction, and where we internally feel like the wheels fall off the bus, much to,
Last
uh,
week
you
was
know,
weird.
assume, yeah, last week, the week before, you know, much to factors way outside of our control because of how the process works,
Yeah.
right? Like, we have a lack of ability to really control and provide that user experience. So you and I spend a lot of time both on the podcast and off the podcast talking about like how to provide a better client experience and how to provide sort of top shelf really proactive experiences for people when they're making this massive purchase. And the way the process works is that our office usually won't hear from the department, from the closer or the closing department, until underwriting gives the final clear to close, right? So you
which
may have
which
gotten
happens to be clear usually like in the
4 days
final.
before closing, 3 days before
Yeah,
closing.
exactly. I find that obviously if the transaction timeline is tighter, like if
Yeah.
it's a faster close, we might be getting that the day
Yeah.
before, 2 days before, is usually what I see. And listen, maybe I'm 24 hours removed out of the loop sometimes, so it feels more exacerbated. But like this concept of clear to close means we're ready to close and issuing documents for you to sign, and preliminarily getting ready to send the attorney, the closing attorney, the money to pay
Yeah.
everything, right? Which,
Hmm.
so there's a lot of moving parts in the back end where, neither the loan officer, your paralegal, me, my staff, like we can't hit the button and make that happen.
Nope.
We're truly at the liberty of the bank. Now, ideally, the loan officer surely is in charge. They're accountable, so to speak. I think leading up to making sure we get to clear to close early, right? Early enough. But even then, eventually it leaves their desk like an email, and it's like not their they can't push it along. So it's super weird, and I agree. I know I'm kind of stealing some of your thunder here. Like we we do obsess over this client experience, and I find that the ambiguity that occurs in this final week based off process that is uncontrollable to any of the key members of the deal creates some confusion. So
A
part of the
hundred
reason we
percent,
wanted
and
to
it
do
makes
this.
us look like we don't know what we're
Yeah,
doing,
yeah,
right? So it's like it creates this real animosity too between like the title and
yeah,
the mortgage, because like the clients are coming to us saying like, how much do I have to bring to close? I want to wire the money in advance, and we're saying, well, we haven't heard from the closer yet. We
right.
don't know. The CD's not balanced, so there's this whole process too that I don't even know if that once
I'm
the
sure
clear
I
to
don't know
close.
enough. I don't know enough of it, right? So yeah, like listen,
Yeah,
I'd like to walk through that because part of the reason we wanted to do this mini series
yeah,
is like the goal is to get this content to our buyers ultimately and make
right.
sure they understand in full about some of these odds and ends that are going to happen during your transaction, and what is controllable and predictable and what isn't. So it's to the point where now I'm just like, hey, it's gonna get weird in this last week, dude.
Yeah,
Just hang on with us. We got you. Don't worry about it. But yeah, listen, you should let's have you go in depth a little bit about some of the
yeah,
innards um, at a high level that I think cause some of those gaps maybe at the end. Again, driven by not us.
yeah. So what happens is, generally speaking, we get, once the purchase and sale is signed, the lender will send us a title order. Then in response to the title order, we send a title commitment package. First part of that title commitment package, or a massive part of that title commitment package, is a draft CD. For the consumer that doesn't know, the CD is the closing disclosure, and there are a whole bunch of laws and rules around when these need to be disclosed, when they need to be sent. And there's usually two major milestones. Is once at the very beginning of the process, when you're working with a loan officer, you should get an initial closing disclosure, and that will have your loan estimates, all of the sort of estimated things. And then prior to closing, the bank has to send out 3 days before closing a final CD or closing disclosure. This is part of the Consumer Protection Bureau. This is part of what was enacted to protect the consumer after the 2008 mortgage crisis. And it's to
Commonly
show you
referred
what your
to as
fees are so
TRID.
you don't show up at a closing. I'm sorry, what?
So commonly referred to as TRID, truth in
TRID, yep. Yeah.
lending disclosure.
Or truth in lending, yep. So ooh, very scary, very ominous. So that CD has to come out so that the buyer doesn't show up at the closing and say, "I can't believe this is what it costs. I didn't know. What
Right.
are these fees?" So its intent is great, right? Like
Sure.
its intent is to make the consumer more educated, make the consumer understand what they're paying for, and and that's great. But I think how it has gone into practice is that a lot of lenders, I don't think, send the CD out until it's got that clear to close and sent to the closing department. So they haven't even looked at our draft CD until it goes to the closer. So then there's this process where our team and the closing department go back and forth trying to balance the prepaids, the fees, the initial funding of the escrow. And a lot of that is based on the information we receive back from the municipality, right? So on every transaction, we have to order what's called a municipal lien certificate from the town in which the property, or town or city, the property's in. And what this tells us is what the real estate taxes are, any other municipal charges, and what's outstanding, and showing that it's either going to get paid on the day of closing or it's already paid, so that we know that that buyer on the day of closing has all the taxes and municipal charges paid as of that date. But what it also does is it sets the rates for the initial funding and the prepaids on the taxes. So that's where that information comes from. So we tell the lender, then the lender comes back and says, we want this many months. And there's this back and forth until our CD matches the lender CD. Sometimes that's one draft, sometimes it's 20, right? It can go back and forth a number of times until everybody's on the same page. Then, once that's done and approved, then usually they release the closing package. Sometimes, depending on the lender, sometimes we get the closing package a day before. Sometimes we get it while the clients are in the conference room, right? So, it depends on the lender and what their process is. But we don't have that final number. So what I've started working with clients on is saying, during this process where we're balancing with the bank, the likelihood of the number skewing one way or the other is going to be minimal, and it's going to be a bump of $4,000 up or down, right? So if you have a client who is very proactive, wants to make sure they're moving money around, wants to make sure the money's wired long in advance, wants to know what their numbers are, I've started, reaching out to them saying, here's the draft. We don't have this finalized yet. We think it's going to be $3,000 or $4,000 one way or another. So what we're going to do is we're going to have you wire us the money on the cash to close on the draft. And you can bring a personal check for, any difference if it goes up, and we'll cut you a check back if it goes down. And I think that that's really the best way to approach this, because sometimes we don't know what that final number is until we're walking into the closing room. So, in an effort to try to make the experience better for the client, that's sort of the approach that I've started to take, is let's get them in there, explain the process, and let them know why we don't have the final number. And then let's give them some data point that they can start relying on. Because can you imagine buying the most expensive thing you've ever bought, and you don't know how much you have to bring, right? You don't know if it's $100,000. You don't know if it's $4,000. I mean, hopefully throughout the process, you've got some pretty clear understanding of the range, but sometimes people don't.
Yeah, listen, I think, and thanks for the explanation there, right? And obviously a little bit more in depth than I think most consumers would get. But the gear here is to try and explain these final steps to the consumer to make sure that they understand this isn't for a lack of action. There's a lot of, for lack of a better word, bureaucratic and compliance-based things in the back end before someone is willing to literally wire out hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars for you to secure this, with a few signatures. So, that final week can be a little dodgy, and our aim is to keep y'all informed as best as possible through the process. So, just know there's a lot going on in the back end, and obviously your point people that have been involved in the transaction the entire time are going to continue to be those point people, and as soon it's not for a lack of trying. As soon as we can get you that info, the better. And I agree. This is stressful for people. We do aim to make it as stress-free as possible, so you can predict a little bit of turbulence. Think about it. You're flying somewhere, all of a sudden that plane's shaking, people are falling out of their seats. You're scared shitless, right? But if the pilot hops on and says, hey, everybody, just wanting you to know we're going to be flying into some weather. Hang on, buckle the seatbelts. We're going to hit some really light turbulence. You're like, all right, cool. I feel okay about this. So that's kind of our aim. That was a really good analogy. I'm just trying to make sure our aim here is to educate and put the client at ease as we try to aim for better client service. But one of
Yeah,
the
and I think
go
coming
ahead,
up with workarounds too,
no
right?
doubt.
Like how can we make it more comfortable for you? Because it is totally frustrating to, make this major purchase and really not
Yeah,
know what it's
yeah.
ultimately going to cost.
You know, it's good advice too, especially if the client has the liquidity to keep it all really easy. Let's say you got to come to closing with 100 grand, you're waiting on that final CD, and to your point,
Yeah.
maybe it's swinging 4K one way or the other. Hey, Brendan, do me a favor if you can, just grab a check for 105,000, make it
Yeah.
out to such and such at so and so, and here's the deal: we think it's going to be too much, and I'll just turn around and cut you that balance right back. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
because these need to be what we call guaranteed funds. It's got to be a wire or a bank check. And so the
Yeah.
last thing we want when you're supposed to be running to a final walkthrough here, which we'll talk about in a short minute,
Yeah.
you're waiting on this final figure. Going to the banks has been harder since COVID. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like getting a bank check is harder. Even meeting with a teller is hard, right? So it's
And
honestly
wiring's
easy.
hard,
Yeah,
right? So
yes, it
like
is.
on
Yes, it
Bank
is.
of America, like you and I know bank at Bank of America for our corporate stuff. Like I had to do a wire the other day, and there are four different choices. And if you're
Yes.
not paying attention, you could pick something that would have the money available in 10 days,
Yeah,
right? Like that
if at
that is
all.
not good, right?
Yeah,
So
it's to
like
the point where with my I don't know what you should talk to Mashoon,
Shamoon,
over Shamoon
Shamoon.
Mashoon. Yikes, we'll have to cut that one out. We'll have to talk to Shamoon
We got to get
over.
Shamoon on the
We
pod.
should get to.
Oh,
He,
we should get
we
Shamoon.
should get him on the pod. He would be very entertaining. I'd make you an espresso.
Don't tell
Don't
anybody.
tell anybody. I bet you he actually wouldn't be able to come on, but
I bet he wouldn't either.
he said, "Don't tell them you have my phone."
We could just say he works for a local bank and not name the bank.
We could.
Yeah.
So Shamoon, you know, he's got me in some preferred rewards business banking, and so all my B of A wires are free, which is actually great.
Oh, I
Yeah.
don't have that.
So they hit you. So I just do everything to $30 now,
Yeah.
and they charge you, but then they refund it, which is pretty sweet.
Oh,
Yeah,
that is
very
sweet.
dope. Very dope. We'll have
But
to
that's a trick. So we actually had a client,
I think
and
you were telling me this. They picked the
I
wrong
talked to
one.
her the other day, and we talked about it a little bit more. You know, she went on, she sent the money,
ACH'd it.
and ACH'd it, and we couldn't close for 4 days because we didn't have the money. So in Massachusetts, the lawyers, and we're not bad guys, like we're not trying to like say we don't believe in the banking system. We are not allowed to go to record or disperse the funds until we have 100% of the money included in the transaction. So, that's why we say we need a cashier's check or a wire, because
Right.
cashier's check are good funds. We can deposit in that account. It will be available immediately because it's drawn on the bank, not on someone's individual account. Or
Right.
a wire hits our account. So we're much more interested in having it available because it's the law and we are required to. It's not because we're like, we don't trust you, we're bad guys. We just can't
Right.
do it any other
And
way.
listen, that's why if the buyer has the liquidity to either
Mm-hmm.
overwire,
Yeah.
overcompensate, and take some funds back at closing,
Mm-hmm.
or yeah, get that bank check. And that's what I always tell people to do. But I get it, they really want to have the exact amount and the like. But
Yeah.
it can be stressful when you get a closing at 9 a.m. and it's a Friday and you're trying to get to record and it's registered land recorded. I just screwed up.
Registered
Yeah,
land.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's registered land. Like this thing might take a few. So if you're running around at the final walkthrough again, which we'll talk about in a minute, and you have to also go get a bank check and the bank's delayed. Now we're late on closing. The attorney's schedule screwed up. So listen, if you can swing it, guys,
And for
bring
registered land, some of them we have to record in person. So we
right,
can't even send the
right,
courier with
right,
the check until we have your check.
right. And that's this concept of going on record, like it's
Mm-hmm.
physically sold
Yeah.
officially because it's logged with the registry of deeds. So
Yeah.
listen, best practice. I know you're waiting as a buyer, freaking out for your final number. If you got the liquidity, grab an extra 5K. We know it's going to be within that. We'll cut you a check. The closing attorney will cut you a check back at closing, and it's all gravy. It's all the same at the end of the day. So that can also help eliminate some of that kind of waiting game
Yeah.
uncertainty, tech stress in the final 48 of closing. I find, but
Yeah.
listen, sometimes. And I've personally been there when I buy one of my first properties. I'm scraping up every last dollar of every bank account I've ever had to get that extra 1,000. And So when you get hit with that bomb at the last minute, it's not always possible. So that's why
Hmm.
you just lean on the closing team, and they'll help you the best they can.
Yeah. And I think that's great advice. And it's really where I've landed. And I'm just like constantly pushing that now.
Yeah, good. So we mentioned the final walkthrough. So this is more on the realtor side of things, right? So as we get so part of every purchase and sales contract usually is going to allow 3 or 4 access points to the property that you are purchasing or selling, for the buyer to come through. Usually those are in no particular order. A bank appraisal, right? You're going to allow the bank to come in and do a bank appraisal. You're going to allow a final walkthrough, which we'll get back to. Usually another ancillary spot for measuring or a plot plan of some sort, for the buyer to come in and interior, just a common courtesy, relook at everything, do a post inspection or whatever. And this is, again, all post purchase and sales. And that happens usually in a 30 to 45-day window. So you're not going to the place you're buying 75 times, inconveniencing the active seller as they pick up and move. So, because it's still their house, they're still living there. So this final walkthrough, usually I personally like to schedule as close to closing as possible, for a couple different reasons. I mean, if you're closing at 9 a.m. on a Friday, maybe a late evening walkthrough on the night before is good. Maybe a first thing really early on Friday is good. And we're really just going to validate 2 different things. And obviously, there's going to be some intricacies of this with lease backs and the like, but we're simply validating A, the property is in the same like kind condition that it was when you submitted your offer. There's no active water stains, the water is still running, the heat still works, the AC still works, and the like. And 2, the seller's shit is out of the property. Okay. Now, obviously, as most people sell and buy or move cross country or sell and actually lease back their own existing home for a very short period of time, under 60 days, um, sometimes that's a little anticlimactic because you can't validate all of it because the seller stuff is still there. But ideally, it should be in this broom swept clean condition with all fixtures, aka light fixtures that were installed or the appropriate appliances listed. They're all still there, and really junk removed. And so I like to do it as close to closing as possible because, God forbid, on a day like today when it's 90 some odd degrees out, if we went the night before and the AC was off, it was a little bit cooler out. Today it's not working. We're not gonna know that, or we're not gonna have the time to sit around and see if it cools down appropriately. Um, and obviously, I think we've had clients over the years, not my personally, but I've heard of stories of clients who did the walkthrough the night before, pipe burst overnight. They walk in post closing to a cracked water pipe or something like that. So listen, the closer you can go to closing, the better. But you obviously don't want to be disruptive to the closing process at the same time. So that's a big part of closing day or the day before closing. Your realtor should really organize that on your behalf. And listen, does every final walkthrough go perfect? Absolutely not.
Some
So
of them
Brendan,
are catastrophic.
some of them are catastrophic. Some of them result in extortion, which they
Yep.
shouldn't.
I had an extortion this week.
I remember.
Yeah.
I did see that successfully closed. Congratulations.
Yeah.
With a price concession, and so kind of walk us through. There's a good final walkthrough. All is good. Everyone shows up at the closing table. Places vacated. Places in broom swept condition. We here at Reference like to professionally deep clean the property to give it to the next person. It's just the right thing to do. That the buyer is going to come through unless it's new construction, and they're going to deep clean the whole place. They're going to be a little skeeved out about who was there before. If we can make that a little bit nicer for that buyer, we're gonna do it. And even when we represent the seller, it's just the right thing to do is to make sure that we're exceeding expectations. So, but let's say it doesn't go well, Brendan. There's usually a few different options. Why don't you walk us through those?
Yeah. So, I think this is where having a really, great realtor involved helps, right? So like we need to start advocating for, either a fix, either money, or not closing, right? So depending on the severity of the situation, and there are different levels of issues, right? So we may walk in, there may be trash, right? They may not have moved out. They may have left a swing set. They may have, not read the P&S. Maybe they left some junk appliances that we weren't expecting. So then it's a matter of like, all right, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get a junk guy out here. We're going to have to either take pictures and send it to a junk guy to get a quote. So that's usually a money fix, right? So when there's stuff left, it's either the seller's going to come back and get it, or the seller's realtor is going to come back and get it, or or we're negotiating some sort of concession to deal with the stuff, right? So stuff is kind of easier. Also problematic, showing up and the buyer's still there, the seller's still
Yep.
there, rather, right? So like showing up and they haven't moved yet, a huge deal, can be incredibly problematic,
Right.
and depending on what the situation is, can throw a whole bunch of things off, right? Like especially if the buyer is already out of their other place and their movers are out front, right? Like waiting to go on record, that can be a problem. So then we're talking about money, we're talking about penalties, we're talking about um, all sorts of stuff, and they're probably going to leave stuff around there. It's probably going to be dirty. We're probably
Right.
going to have to delay moving
Right.
in. So that
Right.
is going to have significant
Harm.
cost to the buyers,
Yep.
right? So, that's more on the problematic side than just leaving junk.
Yeah.
Then
Great.
there's, taking stuff we thought that was going to be left, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Typically these aren't the most expensive things, but they have value. If they're appliances, the problem may be they're on back order. A lot of appliances are still not caught up. Like you can't walk into Best Buy and walk out with a refrigerator tomorrow, like depending on the model you want. If you want a good one, you're waiting a while. If you want a Sub-Zero, it's 18 months, right? So like depending on the level of the appliances, like it could be a bigger problem than just we don't have
Right.
one,
Right.
right? So then, depending on the realtor, the lawyers, who's involved, who's worked together before. Sometimes I lead that discussion. Sometimes you, like, it all
Yeah.
depends on a multitude of factors, right? Like you may be in the weeds that day. You may have 4 closings. I may take that on.
Yeah.
I may be in the weeds that day. You may take it on. Like it depends. But
Right.
somehow we're having a discussion with the other side about how do we fix the
Yeah. How do
problem.
we solve it? Right.
Right.
It's
Bigger
funny.
ones.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, I
No,
was
go
just going
ahead.
to say a point you just made, and we've made several parts in this miniseries, is like, man, great time to be working on a good team that's aligned, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, hitting up the lender, letting them know, hey, we might be slightly delayed. That's important because there's some legal ramifications with the money if we're not
Yep.
closing, right? And
Yep.
and further delays of the paperwork and a new CD and all that stuff. If we're in a
Package
delay, right?
reissuing.
Yep.
Yep. Wiring
And
money back.
that's why it's always easier usually to perform, right? But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you gave a lot of examples. I wrote a few down. Taking items that you shouldn't have, appliance issues. I just wrote a few down that I just had that I'll walk you guys through as a few examples, like a roofing
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah. I didn't even get
It's
to
not,
big issues.
yeah, not clean
Yeah.
junk. I had another septic issue that we can walk through. The Honestly, most of these, I would say 9 out of 10 times, and obviously you're welcome to chime in. 9 out of 10 times, or at least 7 out of 10 times, you can usually solve this monetarily with either a credit out of seller proceeds. So seller did not execute properly, and they will kick in and maybe help with some of those prepaids that we talked about in the last series, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, or you can do what's called an escrow holdback, which is
Mm-hmm.
literally the seller is going to temporarily not receive some of their funds, right? So
Mm-hmm.
let's say 2 rooms worth of junk was left. In a worst case scenario, that's $1,000 for a junk company to come take. I'm ballparking that because I've done this a lot. Not every junk company, full disclosure, is the same.
Nope.
Shout out Red's Rubbish. We love you guys. So we say it's $1,000. We maybe say let's place 1,500 or 2,000 just to, in a worst case scenario, put
Yeah.
that aside out of the seller's funds. As soon as the seller removes it or the buyer removes it on the seller's behalf, that slush fund or those seller's funds pays. Someone was just beeping. Pays that bill, and we all move on. And that way, the buyer can perform, get access. The seller can get their money for their closing that they're going towards, or whatever they're doing with their funds. Usually, the easiest solve is some sort of escrow. It's a lot more paperwork on us, I think, on the back end.
Yeah.
But it's the best from a client standpoint a lot of the times.
Mm-hmm.
She's in that example of a not vacated property. I think you and I would agree that's we're not performing,
Yes.
or we are withholding so much
Significant.
money,
Yeah.
yeah, to pay for hypothetically lost rent or mortgage payments that are not going to be able to be made, plus any other living accommodations, plus any type of legal fees for a significant amount of time in effort to get access to this property. The right thing to do unless it's like some sort of absurd investment where maybe the buyer can make out with that hypothetical concession. The unfortunately and painful advice is let's push this off,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Which
Because that's what.
nobody wants to do,
No,
mind
and
you.
I think that's kind of what's nice about being on a busy team is like we're gonna have the clear headed conversation with you as the consumer. Like, dude, you shouldn't do this. This is a bad idea. You are putting yourselves in harm's way. Like, I don't want you to do it. And those are some pretty powerful words from an attorney and a realtor,
Mm-hmm.
specifically when they are
Mm-hmm.
aligned. I
Mm-hmm.
almost always think that unfortunately the reality is there's probably a realtor who needs that closing money and is trying to find some baloney solution that is good for the realtor to get paid and put the client in harm's way. And that's where you see the attorney being like, that's a bad idea. And now you're not aligned and the client really doesn't know what to do. Um, I'll tell you right now, consumers out there, that's bad advice from your realtor. That's bad advice. So
Well, it depends. Yeah, I mean, it
in the
depends on what the advice
non-vacated
is and what
example,
the issue
yeah,
is. Yeah, but not
yeah,
vacating or not even begun to move out is like a telltale
yeah,
sign of a bigger
scary,
issue. Yes.
no doubt, no doubt.
Yeah.
So,
In massive construction problems like the broken pipe, the water leaks, falling in roof, like something that is materially different than at the time you made your offer or your
yeah,
inspection, that is a real problem, right? So like we
yep,
talk about problems and like I like to call them real problems and fake problems, right? Like fake problems are these little things that like people get all worked up about and posture over, that are just going to get, we all know they're going to get resolved once we meet somewhere in the middle, but people
yeah.
make big deals
You
to
guys were
to try
supposed to
to,
cut the lawn and you didn't.
yeah, right. And
Let's
then there are
relax.
like real problems, right?
Yeah,
Like that the porch fell off, or that
right,
the front door, or like the front door is gone, or there was a tree that fell through the roof. Like those
right,
are
right.
things that are gonna have an
Did
impact.
someone steal the front door to a property you were
No, I
closing
just
on?
made that up.
Oh, okay.
But
I'll
I
give you a
mean,
couple. I'll give you a couple real ones that happened in the
yeah,
last
what's the
30 days.
craziest thing you've seen at a walkthrough?
Well, the craziest thing I've seen a walkthrough, I'd have to go back in my brain for, but the most common things I've seen recently, we did a final walkthrough just a few weeks ago, and there was a little bit of water leaking.
Yeah.
Um, and we didn't have, again, we did this the night before, crazy rain, coastal community. Maybe this is sideways rain, maybe it's not. It didn't show itself before, so we dispatched a roofer. Luxury of doing it the night before.
Mm-hmm.
Good vendor relationships, also the luxury of working with a good team.
Mm-hmm.
Got a quick quote on what that would be. Was able to get that passed on to the buyer, and a credit made out of seller proceeds. Kind of an easy fix. Um, the client proceeded to just put a whole brand new roof on the property, which is probably the right thing to do as a homeowner, and spend a little bit more money, maybe a little bit more than they should have. But sorry guys, but we did at least get them the cash for that small repair if they were going to repair that one little section, right? Another one I just had, which was interesting, is and we see this a lot. We see this a lot during the fall and in the winter months. There's a property on septic, and we had the buyer, and the seller was putting in at the seller's sole cost a new septic system for closing. Very standard, happens all the time. Now, obviously, you can't dig a giant trench and do plumbing in the dead of winter. So sometimes that either gets pushed or there's escrow arrangements and the like. This one was not that case. And so we did actually add some language to the purchase and sales originally, that we wanted to make sure that the grading, because a lot of the times when they're doing new septic, they relocate it. So we were very concerned. They had a nice yard before. They didn't have any plans to do a pool or anything like that. But hey, we want to know where it's going. We want just like some say as to the plan. We're not going to make you reapprove it, but where is it going to go? We want to know, and you got to make sure you grade it to our satisfaction, right? Because we know that septic sometimes can end up in these bumpy, hilly places, and there was also a small like kind of not wetlands but stream behind. So like if this was done wrong, it's going to create a water issue. So we put
Mm-hmm.
that in there,
Yeah.
and so we
And
went to the
and grass problems, right? So you want to make
yeah,
sure that with septic that they're going to reloom or
yeah, 100%.
resod or
All of which
hydro-seed. Yeah.
Yeah, all of which we placed in the purchase and sales. So we went to the final walkthrough the
Yeah.
morning of closing. Okay,
Yeah.
we had just had a huge rainstorm. Um, probably about 4 or 5 inches of water in the basement. Now, mind you, we did a uh, inspection post PNS after a very rainy day, no water issue. We were there during a crazy rainstorm, no water issue. And all of a sudden now there was a fairly exorbitant water issue. On top of that, a ton of cellar belongings left in the basement. So now not only are these belongings in the basement, they're also soaking wet. And the grading was poor. Not
Yeah.
only was the grading poor, it actually was kind of poorly graded in favor of whisking water towards the house.
Oh, I was
This
going to
this
say
is
it
a
must have
this is
created the flooding.
this is a problem, right? So
Yeah.
now brand new septic. They did do the rest of the work, obviously above board, and so this was one of those options where we wanted to make sure the buyer felt super comfortable. Oh, and on top of that, in the same final walkthrough, this really happened. Older steam furnace that is also not older. It's actually about 10 years old, where it has indirect hot water. So it's also running oil and producing hot water passively as it runs. Okay. So the emergency release valve is leaking on the furnace, creating a different puddle under the furnace. And there, like, a valve had gone. And we knew this because we cranked the heat.
Yeah.
So I cranked the heat. This is the middle of June. I
Yeah.
ripped it up to 90. We need to make
Yeah.
sure this thing turns on. Lo
Yeah.
and behold, water spraying everywhere. So we ended up getting a pretty sizable escrow holdback because, again, the house was vacant. My client's doing a huge renovation. This isn't the end of the world. We're not moving in tomorrow.
Yeah.
They still have a place. They're renting. They're not selling. It was the right thing to do to try and do a quick holdback
Yeah.
and solve these issues. And right, wrong, or different, we got the holdback pretty much exclusively written in favor of the buyer because we had some maybe leverage, you would call it. And the sellers at the end, even though they fixed a ton, they still didn't really execute on the grading, and we ended up getting
Yeah.
the vast majority of those funds released to the buyer for them to undertake the proper grading project and do it complete to their satisfaction. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe might have not been the perfect solve, but happy for the clients to basically really get what they need. And listen, like, if you could have been in the basement in the moment, like, they were freaking out. I'm like, guys, don't worry about that. We got
Of
this.
course,
Like,
nothing scarier than water, right? Like, because where to come from? Where is it? Is it in
right,
concrete? Is it in drywall? Is it in carpet? Like,
right.
water freaks people out, I think,
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
than anything else.
Yeah. And so luckily, we've been through that so many times. It's like, I got this. Don't worry about it. Let's handle it. And again, good partnership with attorneys solves the case, right? So, what was the craziest final walkthrough I've ever had? I'm sure something will come to memory, but I don't have a. I don't
I
have
mean,
a
what about that
wild
one in
story.
Boxford where the sellers just like had no like
Oh, dude,
just
that was a
didn't
pretty
move
good
out,
one.
like just didn't move out,
That was a pretty good one. How did I
like
forget about that already?
dropping bombs in the toilet, like the whole thing was like the grossest, most horrible thing. Like I
Yeah,
felt
yeah,
so bad for our clients.
yeah. We had those clients. It was just at the beginning of this year where a large house, 6 to 9 thousand square feet, a lot of extra space, and I I think we got some inkling, if you remember, during that. They're like, "Hey, we're gonna struggle to be out on time," and we kind of laid down the law. And I did 4 final walkthroughs of that. So this is a good example. I went up there the morning of and just like put my eyes on the property, and they were so far from being ready to perform. So yeah, listen, that was that was just the most egregious one. But I think I really placed that on, other than the seller, on one party, being the realtor. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's the realtor's job to be clear, like we are with our clients, and explain
Yeah.
your obligation to be out at the time of final walkthrough, because it's going to be immediately thereafter on the day of closing. Doesn't matter if it's 9 o'clock or at 4 o'clock. It's the buyer's property that day. The second it's on
Yeah.
record, your shit
Yeah.
should not be in it. So,
Well, and I think it
listen,
goes back to the first part of this series that we did about like interviewing an agent, understanding the agent you work with, like having a professional that onboards you, right? Like in your onboarding of
right.
sellers, like going through what closing looks like and knowing that, you can't be there with like 10 rooms of furniture at the walkthrough,
Right.
right? So like proper training by the agent is so important, and as a buyer or a seller even, like when you're interviewing agents, you want to make sure that they're talking about these things with you, and we're walking through what does it look like, what does the process look like, because you know you can't blame a seller if the agent never told them,
Yeah. And that's the thing I remember specifically asking that realtor. I go, "Hey, listen, I know
yeah.
you're fed up with me right now because I'm in your ear. When was the last time you went to this property? When was the last time you told yourself, I haven't been there in months? Yeah, it shows because you didn't get this client ready to perform, and that is on you. It's your job.
As an agent representing sellers, do you do a pre walkthrough with your
Yes.
client?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I maybe not necessarily with the client, but like you and I have a deal that's supposed to close this week. Who
Yeah.
knows if it's going to? It's the middle of the week.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything about that
Yeah.
closing
I,
coming
I
up
I
here.
thought about that about 10 minutes ago while we were talking.
Yep. But like that house is vacant, so we're just doing the right thing and we're checking on it as often as possible. What if
Hmm.
a pipe burst in there? We wouldn't have any idea unless we were checking. It's
Right.
irresponsible to not check on it. So yeah, listen. Luckily, a lot of our deals also are with very strategic final walkthroughs, lease backs, and the like. But that's why we always try and get in. Hey, when are you moving? What are you doing? We want to bring in the cleaner. We're not leaving things to chance. You know. So yeah, it might not be with the client, but clear expectation setting, usually within a week of closing, making sure the timeline is tight, culminating with a final junk removal. You're right. We like to tell clients, we don't do this for everybody, of course. You know, it depends on which tier you select when you sell with us. But um, I tell people we want to make it easy. I want you to take the stuff that you want to take. I want you to move it, and I want you to go to your new house. Okay, and just say goodbye to the rest of the stuff. Right. So like when we moved the last time, we took 2 full junk loads out with Red's rubbish. Right. So I did that in prep of decluttering and then ultimately a final junk haul. We do the same thing for clients. You take the stuff that you want to take. You're going to throw out the rest. Let us handle it, and don't leave 17 dumpsters in your house. I'm going to bill you, but we do some complimentary work where we use our vendors to empty out the place, and then we bring in a professional cleaner, and ultimately that's how you deliver the property the right way at final closing, because most people have moved, they already have somewhere to go.
Yeah.
So no one's selling their house without having a place to go, and it's very easy to line that place up to have both for a few days, even
Hmm.
if we get tactical with moving your closing back a day or two
Hmm.
to make sure that it works out. So yeah, final walkthrough, really big deal.
Hmm.
Do not skip it. Sometimes
No.
clients do skip it, and I
Mm-mm.
personally will go on their behalf. Especially again in these use and occupancy scenarios where, like, yeah, well, it doesn't seem like it makes much sense to go. Hey, listen, I'm going to go for you to set my eyes on it one more time and make sure that this place still looks good. So
Yeah, because ultimately the client owns it at that point, right? So
yeah,
no matter what
yeah,
the condition is, like, you own it.
yeah,
So you want to check. This is your largest investment most often.
yep,
So like, I don't know, like I like to check on my investments.
yeah.
So
Let's make sure
yeah.
before you own it. Like it's like you don't take delivery of the car blind, and if it's all smashed up, you're not taking it, right? So
No, I hate buying a new car too, because you never get to see the one you're actually getting until like they bring it up. Like, right? Like, think about that. Like, you
yeah,
go and you test drive the test drive one, and you never
gross.
like really see the one you're getting. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know. Like, sometimes I think there's stuff in it that like isn't there, and you're like,
that
what the
happened to me.
hell?
Remember that?
I do remember that,
Yeah,
right? So like, let's not do that with your house, right? Like, it's
yeah,
a
that's
lot
valid.
harder to get out of your house without
That
losing
is a
money in
fact.
a short order than like getting out of a new car.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
All right, we got 2 things left on this topic. Annual
Yeah.
maintenance items.
Well, we
Lean on
didn't
your.
do closing,
Oh, we
right? So
didn't.
after the walkthrough, you're going to come either to my
I guess we
office or
didn't.
Seth's office or your realtor's office, and you're
Or
going
the
to sign
registry of
all this
deeds.
paperwork, right? It's gonna take 45 minutes to an hour. You're going to sign the same thing a million different ways. You're going to be shocked at the number of pieces of paper you have to sign. Then, once everything's signed, our office goes and reviews since the title was done. to make sure that the seller hasn't sold the property to anybody else and hasn't taken out any new liens or loans against the property. Once we've confirmed that and confirmed that we have all the money in our account, then and only then are we allowed to send it to the registry of deeds. So what the registry of deeds is a government agency. Each county has their own, they're elected officials, and they're all run slightly different. There are two types of land, recorded and registered, way too confusing. So essentially, most of them allow us to record electronically. So what we do is we upload everything. It takes, an hour or two for the staff at the registry to review that. And then once they accept that, you're on record. So now the deed has been recorded with the county, and you are now the owner of record of that property. So now you'll get a call from Seth. You'll get a call from, maybe an email from our office to let you know that all of this is done. You can go in there, you can rip the walls down, you can rip the carpets out. You can't touch anything in the house. You really shouldn't even go in the house if your realtor gave you the keys in advance. Like you're not supposed to even go in until you hear from us that you're on record. Then you own the place. It's all yours. That was quick closing.
And I tell people, you should probably read it. And obviously you guys do a really good job of explaining and making the closing package fun and whatnot. But if you don't sign it all, you don't get the house, right? So, not telling you that you should just breeze through it. But at that point, there should be more than enough opportunity to review the stuff that you're kind of hopping into beforehand. So yeah, there's usually some post-closing maintenance stuff. Lean on your realtor for that. We like to give clients a little bit more info. Actually working on something pretty cool in the back end to opt clients into a home maintenance type program where all they simply have to do is to kind of text concierge and broker, we'll broker on their behalf any service kind of post-closing, which would be pretty cool.
I love that.
Kind of a little closing gift. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. So it's something we're working on the back end, but here's the deal. Like you just said, this is one of the biggest investments of your life, right? Just like your car that you bring for oil changes and the like. A lot of people forget to do the really basic stuff at their house, whether that be basic landscaping or heating and cooling maintenance and the like. There's a lot to do. So lean on your realtor who kind of helped put you in the place. For local vendors, they're typically a local expert. We're obviously happy to help you out. And really the only other thing that it's more of a post-closing type thing, we're going to send you here at Reference a copy of all your closing documents. Obviously, you're going to need some of those for tax purposes and the like. And so, God forbid you misplace some of that stuff, feel free to reach back out and we can get you some of those docs. But I think there's something that's pretty important that we've kind of coined the mortgage protection program, right? When you think about, you just had a couple people, usually in a huge life moment, buy something pretty big. Well, and there's some dark stuff here, but there's a couple extra big steps you should take just to be a responsible adult, like setting up your trust and your estate, setting up maybe some life insurance to make sure that your family is taken care of, because now you have some bigger bills to pay, and you want to make sure you keep some important stuff set up for them. So I'll let you kind of talk a little bit about that as a quick advertisement, for lack of a better word, but it's something that we kind of encourage a lot of our clients to potentially set up a consultation with either you 30, 45, 90-day post-closing. After all the dust settles, partner with somebody like a Martin Conley from Northwestern Mutual and learn some of your life insurance options. It's just the right thing to do to take care of the household. So talk about that a little bit and what are some steps that those clients could take and really just maybe a little bit more of the case for why that's so important.
Yeah. So one of the things that I talk to all my clients about are, there's two major concepts here. One is you are now buying an asset that you can't have a beneficiary form for, right? Like up until this point, you as an individual, if you are a renter or first time home buyer, like everything you've owned, you can just fill out a form at the institution that holds that asset and make sure that if you die, it goes to somebody, right? So real estate is very different. And, we talk a lot about clients that this is really a time to review your estate plan, especially if you're buying it as a non-married couple or a single individual. Like you want to make sure that the world knows like what happens if anything happens to you. So that's really the first major step for a lot of new homeowners is, now you have to start thinking about estate planning and making sure that your assets travel to who they want to do or who you want them to. So talk a lot about that. We'll talk to especially non-married couples when they're buying together about like what happens if one of you dies. How do you want your interest in the property to flow? So taking title is a real big discussion point,
Yeah.
because there are very different ramifications if you take it one way versus the other. So
Yep.
doing proper estate planning after buying a house is really something, that is of paramount import to a lot of first time home buyers, because you now have an asset that you got to deal with. The other thing is that, because a large part of my practice and my background is in estate planning and trust administration and probate, like this is my passion as well. So like I'm super deep in this world, and I meet with a lot of clients that have lost a loved one, and there is nothing more heartbreaking to meet with. And it's, statistically men typically die before women, unfortunately. um
You hate
and
to see it.
typically it's with a widow, right? Like and God forbid it's a young widow or a young widower, right? So someone who's just lost their spouse, maybe they qualified for this home on both incomes and they really can't afford it without both incomes. So there's
Right.
nothing worse than telling that couple that like you can't afford your house, you have to sell it. So one of the things that I advise all my clients to really start thinking about is like what would happen if something happened to one of them, and can the family afford to stay here? So this is a real need for a discussion on life insurance and making sure, at a bare minimum, that the house can be paid for on, with a surviving spouse, right? So, is that enough life insurance? I'll let Martin or another life insurance person have that discussion. I certainly think not. But, at least making sure that there's a roof over the family's head, and that they can stay in this house that you've just spent your whole time trying to buy. So having a proper life insurance program, especially when there's either one wage earner or two wage earners, right? Like if there's one wage earner and you're the stay-at-home spouse, can you afford the house without life insurance if the other spouse dies? Even high income earners, like maybe they just used all their life savings to put into this house, right?
Right.
So these are all things that unfortunately, along with home ownership comes a lot of responsibility. And it's part of making sure that your family's taken care of. And it's, not something I like to think about. It's not something I want to think about. And in fact, I avoided for a while myself. And, being in this world, I finally had to, address it, because it is, somewhat thinking about the possibility of your own inevitability.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, it's super valid, and I think what a lot of people don't know is they think, there's this. And to be clear, we're not life insurance salespeople. We're just looking out for
Nope.
our clients, right? But
Yeah.
there's this concept of term life insurance, which is death benefit, and then there's this concept of whole life
Yeah.
life insurance, which is more of a way to build wealth and maybe doesn't have the
Yeah.
best death benefit, but there's a couple really cool options from whether it's be deep financial savings or ways to save money long term and build longer term wealth. And I think it's worth a conversation, again post
Yeah.
closing, because
Hmm.
there's some big stuff there. And I
Yeah.
think more specifically too, as people build some equity in their asset, they get more to protect, and it's just something to
Yeah.
think about. So, listen, I know
Hmm.
this is a real estate show, and we're talking about buying a home and buyer consult.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit post closing, something to think about, and make sure you're set up kind of long term. So,
The other thing that I'd be remiss if I didn't say that people should be thinking about and staying in touch with is their insurance agent, their
yeah, no doubt.
PNC or property and casualty insurance agent, especially in Boston where we're having massive appreciation in prices. I think a lot of
What am I
buyer.
holding?
Oh,
What am I holding right now?
I don't know.
Hold on, let me.
Nothing.
It's an umbrella.
Oh, an umbrella
You
policy.
know,
Yes,
you don't,
that's not
you
where I
don't.
was headed, but it's a good
Oh,
point.
oh,
We'll
geez,
we'll
my
get
bad.
to it. No, I
Do you
was
not
saying that
hold
I
your
think
umbrella with two hands like this in the rain?
no, you do. Well, I have a one-handed one, but
Oh
yeah.
wow, you're very fancy.
Yeah. No, I think that a lot of people, if you're not paying attention when you get your annual policy renewal and you're not looking at the construction costs to rebuild,
Oh yeah, good call.
yeah, like I think having a comprehensive conversation, especially if you've owned your house after like 3, 4,
For a
5 years
while,
and you're in a market where there's like massive appreciation and inflation, like you may go back and look at your policy and it may be like you may only have 200 grand to rebuild your house and it may cost 550, right? So
right?
you want to constantly be in touch with them because this whole thing changes, and it changes quite regularly. And with inflation, I bet there are a lot of people that are severely underinsured for those reconstruction costs. You
Yeah.
also want to look at housing costs, like what happens if your house burns? Like, are they going to pay? How much are they going to pay to put you up somewhere else while you can't live in it? What are the reimbursements for reconstruction? Is it at $100 a foot or $350 a foot? Like, if you're in
Right.
a house like Seth lives in, which is a nice house
Wow. Wow.
with
Wow.
nice
Wow.
finishes, yeah, like you want to have a little higher, right? So,
We
but
can't all
these are
live in
things that if
Nahant, Brendan.
well, my land's worth a lot, right? My house probably isn't. Like the finishes are kind of yeah.
What's important too is like for the investors out there, there's certain insurance policies that cover lost rent
Yeah.
in these times of loss, and then there's some that don't. So like the insult to injury is having a loss event at a property and then having to relocate tenants, and you
Mm-hmm.
kind of now are paying for them to live elsewhere. If you are misinsured on that, like that can be financially detrimental. So really good
Devastating.
call
Yeah.
to talk to your insurance provider. And then obviously the joke I was making is an umbrella policy. That is a superseding, not superseding. It's a policy that encompasses all other policies. It just provides an extra layer of additional insurance in case of emergency and the like. So anything else on kind of culminating the buyer process and making sure we're all kind of tight for?
No, I think then sitting back and enjoying what you've just worked your tail off to get for you and your family, right? That's what
Yeah,
it's really all
then you get
about.
to buy furniture, all new furniture, and
Yeah.
spend every other last dollar of your savings. So,
And especially if you're buying right now, make sure you're staying in touch with your loan officer for when the rates go down so that
yes,
they can refi you out and save you some money. But
yeah,
yeah,
great call. I think obviously this content hopefully is evergreen in the sense where you can consume it 3 years from now, right now, or tomorrow. But yeah, the reality is we're in a rate environment where they're high, and I think whether it's your realtor to kind of stay engaged, whether it's your closing team, yeah, hopefully you are paying attention even later on. I think we're so close to it that we pay attention. We have the ability to refi, when we see the opportunity. And I don't think the average consumer who buys once every 11 years now is paying super close attention to that. So, it's a great touch point for us realtors or us, the closing parties that are involved, to reach out to the consumer in effort to say, if one of those people called me out of the blue, hey, did you know? Like everyone refied during the pandemic, hopefully. And I think statistically they did. Like I
yeah, I
can
think
save
they
you
did.
$1,000 a month right now. Like I love you. Like
Yeah.
talk about loyalty. So yeah, stay close to those folks during that time. So and listen, for the folks listening on or watching online, drop a comment or shoot us a note about on Instagram at the word RE, and we'd be loving to take and add a few different segments to this where you can maybe ask some questions or anything like that. Be happy to answer those online.
And it's same. So if it's certainly on the legal title side, I'm happy to answer those as well.
Cool. All right, man. Well, Brendan, yet another wonderful buyer miniseries episode. This would conclude the 3-part buyer miniseries on getting ready to and bringing you through contract to closing and post closing. Thanks for everybody who listened in, and we'll catch you next time on the Word.
All right. Thanks, Seth.
Dope.